has the pandemic fueled a rail crisis domestically and globally.
Mm.
So while demand for public transportation dropped about 73% across the country after the pandemic hit, the reduction didn't impact all cities equally. Large coastal cities like Seattle, San Francisco, and Washington, D.C. saw demand fall farther than cities in the Midwest and the South. The reason has to do with the nature of jobs in different cities and who was actually using public transportation before the pandemic.
Mm.
Um, Ridership has slumped 70 to 90% amid lockdowns and social distancing. So let me just place this up for you guys. Coupon codes. But Eurostar is also.
I'm sorry, I had to
But
laugh.
yeah, I
Good.
know. I got to be funny too. So this article is actually more about Eurostar, which is the London tunnel, and it's a tunnel that ends up um, goes into Europe as well later, but it links Britain and France to be more specific. So right now it is going through a really bad decline. It's a 79 to 90% decline in people on the actual train. So this is happening across the country. They lost 22 billion euros in this year.
Mm.
And the same is expected around for the European airlines, according to the CER, which is a Brussels-based trade group representing passengers and freight train operators. So, and then it says thousands of trains have been mothballed, and tens of thousands of workers are on government subsidized furloughs. So, we're talking about a crisis. This is also a crisis because I know I have not been. I've only been on the train twice since this entire pandemic has happened. I've only been on the subway twice.
Wow.
That's my only means of transportation.
Yeah, I haven't been on the trains for many, many, many years. I drive. So like I don't know, man. I don't see it. Like people don't want to go on the trains because of COVID in general, right? Like if they can avoid it, they're gonna avoid it, right? So like that's yeah.
It's also because of work, because people aren't going to having to go to work, which is good for the general numbers. It's good for the COVID numbers, but it's not something that is sustainable. There's no way for like New York City to sustain its current rate of the basically the we already knew that the cost of the fare was going to go up, but there's no question that the cost of the fare is going to go up now. It's going to be five flat by the end of next year, in my opinion. And I have to think about that because I have epilepsy. I have no means to drive on a regular basis. Um, and I have to think about what my future is going to be, and my future is still going to be the subway. It's still going to be public transportation, and this crisis also just shows me these are major systems. Like it has less to do with just me and to do with how much is spent on the rail systems and on public transportation and how much of that is going to waste at this point. And it
Right.
has to go to waste because you have to maintain those systems.
They recently did the Second Avenue line and all these other new lines or whatever that they've been working on. So somebody's got to pay for that, right? And if people, COVID's kind of screwed that up, you know what I mean, financially, so they're gonna have to charge more. That's horrible, man. But it is what it is,
I
right?
mean, it's not just is what it is, though. I think that it's one of those things that we're going to have to pay attention to public transportation because that's what affects the poorest people in
Yep.
these places. And when things turn to somewhat normal, to some degree of normalcy, we're going to have a functioning rail system, public transportation system, um, means for
Right.
people who weren't doing well. And I'm worried that a lot of the projects for places like New York and DC and San Francisco, like they're all going to get, they're just gonna be put on the back burner for now. And that's, I think that's an understandable thing to do if it's for a year or two. I just don't want it to end up destroying our public transportation system. And also, this is one of those things that like Biden and them, they want to fight for a bigger Amtrak system, for instance.
Hmm.
Excella and all of that, they want to increase that. So I am for that personally, but this is the worst time for that to happen. You know,
Yeah. No.
like like I don't blame Biden, but this is the worst time to possibly want to enhance transportation, enhance the structure of the system.
You think if they restructured the way they manage like passengers, like instead of running like 24 hours, 7 days a week on the same hourly like whatever schedule that they have, that they created a new system of how to. I mean, obviously you can't do that with subway trains because subway trains people come in and come out like randomly or whatever. But like those systems in which where you got to buy a ticket at a certain time in order to get on that train in order for you to get a seat, maybe they could create something where they could limit the amount of rides, not the amount of rides, but the amount of what's the word, uh,
Passengers.
trips in general. Like instead of having like on the hour every hour or every other half hour, they make it on the every hour. You know what I mean? And then this way, people, there'll be less trains going out, and they'll accommodate whatever needs to be done. Because at the end of the day, it's like maybe they're over accommodating. You know what I mean? Maybe they're doing too much, which is costing them too much. So you understand what I'm saying? Like maybe
Yeah,
they need to
I mean
reassess
these
their
are the
their
things that
approach.
I mean, they're going to have to reassess their approach. They're
Yeah,
going to have to reassess their approach when more people start riding the train again.
yeah,
Um, I mean, they have a. I can't speak for New York because New York has been keeping on a steady track, though they shut down the train from 2 a.m. to 6 a.m. to
yeah,
clean the trains.
yeah, yeah.
So that's a little bit of a different system. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the answer is. I wish
Like,
I had a better answer. By the
like
way, go ahead,
okay.
please, please.
No, it says like
No,
concert
no,
tickets. Like you have a certain amount of seats, right? So if you fill up those seats, sort of like how they do with concerts. I mean, I'm just saying like an example. Why can't they say, okay, we got X amount of seats on a train, we'll have X amount of tickets, sort of like they do with the planes and so on and so forth. They got to run it similarly, where they're not under what is it under capacity, less capacity for the
less
train. They got
capacity of
Yeah,
them.
they want to make sure the train's full, so they got to coordinate it in a way where that happens. But that's not how it always goes. Obviously, people got to get on when they got to get on sometimes, especially with subways. So subways, is a different situation. But when it comes to like long distance traveling and so on and so forth, there's got to be a way for them to adjust it. You know what I mean? Instead of just necessarily putting it on the passengers. You know what I mean? You were gonna say, what is there a question or something that?
Well, no, all I'm going to say is that it's going to be up to the next transportation secretaries. But
Yeah.
Transportation Secretary Ellen Chu stood down earlier today,
Wow.
so she resigned today.